You stand here carrying a silence that has never been spoken, a silence that is older than the voice you use to introduce yourself, older than the name that was given to you. There was a time, long before you understood words, when the world shaped you through the gestures of those around you. The child you once were is still here, buried like a forgotten seed beneath layers of roles, achievements, and polite smiles. Yet I tell you this, nothing in the soul is ever truly forgotten. The soul remembers. It remembers not in words, but in the strange ache that stirs when you are alone, in the unease you feel when someone's eyes glance past you as if you were invisible, in the way your body stiffens when you are not recognized for who you are. The soul remembers the moments when no one truly saw you. When I speak of being seen, I do not mean being observed with the outer eyes, for a child can be looked at 1,000 times without ever being seen. To be seen is to have your essence recognized, to have someone meet the raw presence of your being without judgment, without projecting their fears or their own shadow onto you. Most children grow up not with seeing, but with being molded. Parents often unknowingly place their unconscious expectations like a net over the fragile essence of the child. The child, sensing this, begins to bend its spirit to survive. This bending becomes the mask, the persona, and once the mask is in place, the world applauds the mask, not the soul beneath it. The soul retreats, waiting for the day when you will have the courage to take off what was never truly you. The child you once were is a sacred archetype. It is not merely a memory, but an energy, a living pattern within your psyche. This inner child is both your most vulnerable self and your most divine connection to life. When I speak of wounds, I am not merely pointing to painful events. I am speaking of the subtle fractures of the spirit that occur when this child is unseen, unheard, unrecognized. There are many of you who walk through life carrying an invisible weight, a weight that does not belong to the adult you have become, but to the child who was asked to be too strong, too silent, too pleasing, too good. These wounds hide in the unconscious, and the unconscious has no concept of time. What was felt at 5, at 7, at 10 years old is still alive today if it has not been brought into the light of consciousness. The question is not whether you were wounded. Every human being carries wounds, for no parent is perfect. No society is without shadow. The question is whether you have learned to speak with these wounds, to listen to them as messengers rather than curse them as burdens. Most people do not listen. They bury their pain under distractions, accomplishments, relationships, even spiritual practices. But what is denied does not vanish. It waits. The unconscious is patient, infinitely patient, and it will surface in dreams, in Suden, anger, in the strange attraction to people who repeat the old injuries until you face what you could not face as a child. Your life is not fully your own. You may wonder why these old wounds feel so powerful. Why does the echo of a childhood's rejection still haunt you decades later? The answer lies in the symbolic nature of the psyche. to the child every gesture from the parent, every look, every tone of voice is not just a momentary interaction, but a message about existence itself. If a parent is unable to offer warmth, the child does not think, my parent is wounded and cannot love me. No. The child concludes, I must be unworthy of love. This belief sinks deep into the unconscious, becoming a shadow that whispers its lies even when you have forgotten its origin. And then, as an adult, you may find yourself in relationships where you crave validation, where you overgive, or where you fear abandonment. You are not reacting to the present alone, you are reacting to a memory that lives outside of time. There is no shame in these patterns. They are not signs of weakness, but of survival. The child within you created strategies to endure, to keep you alive, but what helped you survive may now be the very thing that prevents you from living fully. Perhaps you learned to become invisible so that no one would hurt you. And now invisibility follows you like a ghost in your career, in your relationships. Perhaps you learned to be overly accommodating, to sacrifice your truth for the sake of harmony. And now you wonder why no one truly knows you. These are not random traits. They are remnants of a time when your soul adapted to an environment that could not hold your rawness. When we speak of psychological healing, we often speak as if we are fixing something broken. But I do not believe you are broken. What you carry is not brokenness, but fragmentation. Parts of your psyche have split off because they were not safe to express. These parts, the playful child, the angry child, the grieving child, remain in the shadows of the unconscious, waiting for you to turn toward them. True healing is not about perfection. It is about reintegration, about calling these lost fragments home. To turn toward the wounded child is to enter the underworld of your own psyche. This is not a journey for the faint of heart, for you will encounter the shadow there. The shadow is everything you were not allowed to be: the anger you suppressed, the tears you swallowed, the wild joy you hid because it was too much for others. When you meet your shadow, you meet the parts of yourself that are still waiting to be loved. Do not fear this darkness, for within it lies not only pain but power. In the depths of your wounds lies the key to your authenticity. You cannot be whole by only embracing the light. You must also embrace the night within you. Let me tell you a story, not as a literal tale, but as a symbolic one. Imagine a young child standing in a garden. The garden is wild and untamed, full of vibrant colors and scents. The child is singing to the flowers, laughing with the wind. But then someone comes, a figure of authority, and tells the child, quiet down, stop that, it's too much, be proper, be good. The child, confused, stops singing. The flowers still sway, the wind still whispers, but the child has turned silent. Over time, the child forgets the song. Yet deep in the soil of the garden, the song is still there, waiting to be remembered. You are that child. The garden is your soul. And the song you have forgotten is the true self that longs to emerge, to find the song again. You must go where you once feared to go. This means remembering, not as a mental exercise, but as an emotional one. Memory is not just in the mind, it is in the body, in the nervous system. In the very breath you take, sometimes healing begins when you allow yourself to feel what you once could not feel. It might be a sudden wave of sadness that comes when you least expect it, or a dream where you are a child again, lost in a house that feels both familiar and strange. Do not push these moments away. They are invitations from the unconscious to bring light to what has been hidden. Dreams are often the language of the inner child. In dreams, you might see yourself wandering through childhood landscapes, or you might encounter a small figure, a boy or girl, who looks at you with wide, unspoken eyes. When you meet this figure in dreams, do not turn away. Ask it what it needs, what it feels. You might be surprised by the answers, for in that dream, child's eyes is the truth of your past, and also the seed of your future wholeness. I have often said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you cannot become who you are by ignoring the child you were. The child is the root, the adult is the branches. If the root is not nourished, the branches cannot flourish. This is why so many people feel empty despite their success, restless despite their achievements. They are living from the surface of themselves, not from the depth. To live from the depths is to reclaim the child, to give it the love, the recognition, the freedom it never had. You might wonder, how do I begin? I begin by telling you this: sit with yourself, as you would sit with a frightened child. Offer compassion where once there was only criticism. Speak words to yourself that you once longed to hear. I see you. You are enough. You are safe with me. These words may sound simple, but when spoken with sincerity, they have the power to shift the entire inner landscape. For what the inner child craves most is not perfection, but presence. There is a peculiar alchemy in facing the pain you once hid from. At first, it feels as though you are walking back into a storm you barely survived. But as you enter it with the eyes of the adult you have become, you begin to see that you are no longer powerless. The child was powerless, but you are not, and yet that child still lives within you, clinging to old fears, reacting to the world as if it were the same as it was decades ago. Healing requires a dialogue between the adult self and the child self. It is as though the soul has split into two times, and both must come together if you are to be whole. Imagine taking that small hand, trembling, uncertain, and saying, I am here now. No one saw you then, but I see you now. Many of you carry the wound of invisibility. It is a wound that hides itself behind a smile, behind competence, behind the urge to overperform. You may find yourself seeking recognition, praise, or love from others as if it were oxygen. You try to earn your right to exist by doing, by pleasing, by being what others expect. But let me tell you this truth. Your existence is not something you need to earn. You are not loved because you are useful, clever, or successful. You are loved because you are a soul, a living spark of divine life. Until you realize this, you will keep looking outward for validation that can only come from within. The wounds of childhood often manifest as patterns we cannot escape. Perhaps you find yourself in relationships where you feel small, unseen, or undervalued, echoing the dynamics you knew as a child. You may even choose partners who resemble in subtle or obvious ways those who once failed to see you. This is not because you enjoy suffering, but because the psyche seeks resolution. It recreates the old scene, hoping that this time the ending will be different. But the ending will never be different until you stop waiting for someone else to see you and instead turn to see yourself. Healing is not about changing the past, but about integrating it, about bringing consciousness to what was once unconscious. Think of the archetype of the child in myths and stories. The child is often abandoned, lost in the wilderness, or hidden from the world. Yet, this very child often holds the key to transformation. Consider the story of the divine child in many traditions, vulnerable, yet carrying a spark of something eternal. The psyche uses such symbols to tell us that within our most fragile parts lies our greatest potential. Your inner child is not merely a wound to be healed. It is a source of creativity, intuition, and vitality. When you reconnect with it, you reclaim not only your pain, but also your joy, your spontaneity, your sense of wonder. It is a paradox that to become an adult in the truest sense, you must be willing to meet the child you once were. Most adults avoid this inner meeting. They fear it will unravel them. But the truth is, you are already unraveled if you live without this connection. You may be successful, admired, or seemingly strong, but if you have silenced the voice of the child within, a part of you remains exiled. And what is exiled will find a way to call for attention, sometimes through anxiety, sometimes through depression, sometimes through a feeling of hollowness that no achievement can fill. I once encountered a man who dreamed repeatedly of a small boy locked in a dark attic. The man would wake up sweating, confused by this recurring dream. As we explored it together, it became clear that this boy was himself, a part of him that had been locked away when he was young, when no one seemed to listen to his feelings. In the dream, the boy would not speak, but his eyes would plead. It was only when the man began to dialogue with this dream figure, to acknowledge its existence, that the dreams began to shift. He dreamed one night of opening the attic door and letting the boy out into the sunlight. This was not just a dream, it was a psychic event. It was the beginning of a healing that no rational explanation could provide. Dreams speak the language of the soul, and the soul will always find a way to be heard. Your own psyche may be speaking to you even now. Perhaps it is not through dreams, but through the tension in your body, the restlessness in your heart, or the sense that something essential is missing. Do not dismiss these signals. They are like small knocks at the door of your consciousness, asking to be let in. You do not need to fix a child within you. You need to listen When you listen, you give the child what it was always seeking: presence, acknowledgement, love. This act of inner listening can change the entire architecture of your life. For when the wounded child feels safe, the whole psyche relaxes. Creativity returns, relationship deepen, and life feels more authentic. I know that for many, the idea of facing the past feels like reopening an old wound that should have been forgotten. But the wound is not forgotten. It is carried silently, and it shapes you, whether you acknowledge it or not. The difference between those who heal and those who do not is not whether they were wounded, but whether they are willing to bring consciousness to the wound. Consciousness is like light. It does not erase the darkness, but it transforms your relationship with it. Once you shine light on the hidden places, they no longer control you from the shadows. Let us speak of the shadow now, for it is always nearby when we talk about wounds. The shadow contains not only the parts of you that were shamed or rejected, but also the power, passion, and authenticity that you suppressed. It is as though the shadow were a chest filled with both pain and treasure. And you have been taught to fear it because no one told you that your own gold lies within. When you begin to reclaim the child within, you also begin to reclaim this gold. You realize that the very traits you once hid, your sensitivity, your wildness, your tears, are the very traits that make you whole. In many ancient myths, the hero must descend into the underworld to retrieve something precious. This is not a metaphor reserved for the past. It is a map for the inner life. Your underworld is the unconscious, and the precious thing you must retrieve is often the wounded child. The descent is not easy. You will encounter fear, resistance, and the temptation to turn back. But if you stay, if you hold the gaze of what you once could not bear, you will find that the child does not hate you for forgetting it. The child simply wants to be seen, to be held, to be acknowledged. And when you do this, something remarkable happens. The child begins to trust you. And in that trust, you discover a strength that was always yours. I have seen people transform simply by remembering one thing they were told as children, a hurtful phrase, a moment of dismissal, and choosing at last to rewrite the meaning they gave it. You see, it is not the wound itself that defines you. It is the story you tell about it. The child may have believed, I am unworthy, because someone once treated them as though they were. But now, as an adult, you can see the truth. You can see that those who could not see you were themselves blind, lost in their own unconscious patterns. You can choose to say, I am worthy, not because of what I do or do not do, but because I exist. This is not mere affirmation, it is a return to reality. For the soul does not measure worthiness in human terms. There is a quiet revolution that takes place when you reclaim the child. It is not loud or dramatic, but it changes everything. You may find that you no longer tolerate relationships where you are unseen, that you begin to speak your truth even when it is uncomfortable, that you discover joy in simple things that once felt distant. This is not because you have become someone new, but because you have stopped abandoning who you are. The child within is like the root of a great tree. When you nourish the root, the whole tree flourishes. Your adult life is the canopy, but the life force begins below the surface. You may feel grief when you reconnect with a child, for you may realize how much was missed, how much love and recognition you longed for but never received. Allow yourself to feel this grief. It is not a weakness to mourn what you did not have. It is a sign of strength to face the truth. Grief is the bridge between the past and the present, the process by which the old pain dissolves into acceptance. When you grieve, you make space for something new, not the fantasy of a perfect past, but the reality of a whole present. The journey of the soul is not linear, it spirals. You will find yourself circling back to the same feelings, the same wounds, but each time at a deeper or higher level. Do not think of this as failure. Think of it as the psyche's way of refining you, drawing out the gold hidden in the lead of your suffering. You may feel as though you are standing in the same place, but if you look closer, you will see that your awareness is expanding. Each time you return to the wound, you return with new insight, new strength, new compassion. Healing is not an event but an unfolding, a slow awakening of the parts of you that were frozen in time. Many of you carry a deep hunger to be recognized, a hunger so old that you mistake it for love. But love, real love, is not about filling a hole. It is about seeing and being seen. When you meet someone who truly sees you, something in you awakens, something that was asleep for years. Yet this awakening must first come from within. The paradox is that when you begin to see yourself, all of yourself, the light and the shadow, for the child and the adult, you no longer depend on others to validate your existence. You can stand before the mirror of your own soul and say, I am here, I am whole, and I will no longer abandon myself. There is a profound loneliness that comes from being unseen. It is not the loneliness of being physically alone, but of being spiritually invisible. You may be surrounded by people, yet feel as if you are wandering through life like a ghost. This loneliness can lead to despair, to the belief that something is wrong with you. But I tell you, nothing is wrong with you. What you are experiencing is the pain of a soul that has not been witnessed, a pain that can only be healed by turning inward and offering yourself the presence you once longed for from others. Consider the symbol of the mirror. The child first knows itself by how it is reflected in the eyes of its caregivers. If the reflection is warm, accepting, and attentive, the child grows with a sense of worth. But if the reflection is cold, absent, or distorted, the child learns to doubt its own value. Many of you were given distorted mirrors. You were shown versions of yourself that were incomplete or untrue. As adults, you keep searching for a perfect mirror in others, in relationships, in achievements, in recognition. Yet the true mirror is within. To see yourself clearly, you must first wipe away the dust of old projections and lies. You must learn to look at yourself not through the lens of who others needed you to be, but through the lens of your own soul. The unconscious is like a vast underground river. It flows beneath your daily life, carrying memories, instincts, and archetypal patterns. When you ignore it, you live only on the surface, drifting from one moment to the next. But when you dip into this river, when you dare to listen to the voice of the unconscious, you begin to discover a deeper rhythm, the rhythm of your true self. The wounded child lives in this river. It calls to you through the feelings you avoid, through the dreams you dismiss, through the triggers that seem irrational. Every time you feel an outsized reaction to something small, it is often the voice of that child saying, I am still here. Will you listen? To listen is to reclaim your power. Power, as I define it, is not dominance over others, but alignment with your own truth. When you ignore your wounds, you give your power away to the past, to the figures who once hurt you. But when you face your wounds, you take back that power. You say, I will not be defined by what happened to me. I will not remain in the shadow of those who could not see me. This is the work of individuation, to become the person you were always meant to be, not the person others tried to shape. I once worked with a woman who had spent her whole life trying to be perfect. She believed that if she could just achieve enough, look right, and never make mistakes, she would finally be loved. But perfection is a prison. It was only when she dared to fail, when she allowed herself to be messy and human, that she began to feel truly alive. Beneath her perfection was a child who had been told implicitly, you are loved only when you are good, cared, and obedient. This child was starving for freedom. When the woman met this inner child with compassion, she began to weep. It was as though decades of silent pain were finally being released, and from that moment on, she no longer sought love through perfection. She found it by embracing her authentic self. Your own inner child may be starving, not for food or success, but for truth. It wants to be allowed to feel, to play, to express anger, to dance, to cry, to laugh without shame. It is not enough to think about your wounds. You must feel them. Feeling is the language of the soul. When you allow yourself to feel, you are not regressing into the past. You are retrieving the parts of yourself that were left there. The archetype of the wounded healer tells us that our greatest gifts often come from our deepest wounds. What you have suffered can become the very source of your wisdom, compassion, and strength. But this does not happen automatically. It happens only when you consciously engage with your suffering, when you choose to see it not as a curse, but as a teacher. Every wound has a message. Every pain carries an insight. If you are willing to listen, you will discover that the child within you has been holding a truth that no one else could give you. Sometimes healing begins in the smallest of ways, in writing a letter to your younger self, in sitting quietly with a photograph of who you once were, in speaking words of love to that forgotten version of you. These acts may seem insignificant, but they are rituals of reconnection. They are ways of saying, I remember you, I honor you, I will not leave you behind. In the quiet moments of reflection, you might begin to see images, flashes of childhood, perhaps moments you thought or forgotten. These are not random. They are the psyche's way of showing you where to look. Trust these images. They are like breadcrumbs leading you back to the places that need your attention. When you see a memory that brings pain, do not turn away. Sit with it. Ask what it wants you to know. Often, the memory itself is not as heavy as the meaning you attach to it. By revisiting it with adult eyes, you can give it new meaning, a meaning rooted in compassion and truth. There is also the body, the silent witness to all you have lived. The body remembers what the mind forgets. It holds the tension of every unshed tear, every stifled cry. When you feel tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, or unexplained fatigue, these are not just physical symptoms, they are messages from the body, urging you to listen. Sometimes the most profound healing comes not from words, but from allowing your body to release what it has been holding. This can be as simple as breathing deeply, as letting yourself cry, as dancing without care. In these moments, the child within feels the safety it never knew. Do not rush this process. Healing the unseen wounds is like learning to walk in the dark. You take one step and then another, trusting that the ground will be there beneath your feet. You will stumble, you will doubt, but if you continue, you will find that the darkness is not empty, it is full of life, full of truth that you could not see when you were blinded by the light of mere appearances. As you move deeper into this inner landscape, you begin to notice something astonishing. The very wounds that once felt like chains now begin to reveal themselves as doorways. Each wound holds a key to a part of you that was hidden, a part of you that contains not only pain but also potential. The child you were did not disappear when you grew older. It simply retreated into the shadows, waiting for a time when you would have the courage to come back and retrieve it. And that time is now. The adult you have become is not here to erase the child, but to embrace it, to offer the presence that was once absent. In the moments when you feel most vulnerable, when the old pain rises and you are tempted to numb it or push it away, try instead to turn toward it. Imagine yourself kneeling down to that small, trembling figure inside you. Place your hand on their shoulder, look into their eyes, and say, I see you, I hear you, I will not turn away. These simple words have a power that goes beyond intellect, for they speak directly to the heart of the psyche. They tell the inner child that it is finally safe, that it no longer has to carry its burden alone. You may encounter resistance, a voice within you that says, this is foolish, or I don't have time for this, or even it doesn't matter anymore. This voice is the voice of the persona, the mask you learned to wear to survive. The persona fears the vulnerability of the child because it believes that to show weakness is to invite harm, but the truth is, there is no weakness in acknowledging your wounds. On the contrary, it takes immense courage to face the parts of yourself that have been left in the dark. The persona is not your enemy, but it cannot lead you to wholeness. It is merely a shield. Wholeness begins when you allow the mask to drop and reveal what has always been true beneath it. To heal is not to erase the past, but to transform your relationship with it. You cannot change the fact that no one truly saw the child you were. You cannot rewrite the moments when you felt invisible or unheard, but you can bring meaning to them. You can choose to see those experiences as the crucible in which your soul was forged. You can choose to let the pain teach you how to see others, how to love with depth, how to live with authenticity. Your wounds do not diminish you. They carve out the space within you where compassion and wisdom can grow. The unconscious will guide you if you listen. It will send you dreams, synchronicities, sudden insights. Perhaps you will hear a song that makes you weep without knowing why. Or you will meet someone who mirrors your own story. These are not coincidences. They are the language of the soul. Pay attention. The child within speaks in symbols, in feelings, in moments that feel oddly significant. When you honor these signs, you create a dialogue between the conscious and unconscious, between the adult and the child, between the present and the past. There is a sacredness to this work. It is not merely psychological, but spiritual. To see yourself fully is to touch the divine spark that lives within you. The child is not only a symbol of vulnerability, but of purity, of the unfiltered essence that came into this world before it was shaped by fear and expectation. When you reconnect with this essence, you remember something profound, that you are not here to be perfect or to fit a mold, but to live as the unique expression of life that you are. I invite you to imagine, just for a moment, holding your younger self close. What would you say? What would you offer? Perhaps you would tell them that they are enough, that they are safe, that they do not have to earn love by being who others want them to be. Perhaps you would simply sit with them, offering the quiet presence that no one else gave. This simple act of inner connection can change the way you live today. It can soften the walls you built around your heart. It can help you forgive not only those who hurt you, but also yourself for all the ways you abandoned your own soul. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is not pretending that the wound was not real. Forgiveness is the act of releasing yourself from the grip of the past. It is saying, yes, this happened. Yes, it hurt me, but I will not let it define me any longer. Sometimes forgiveness comes naturally, like a gentle tide. Other times it is a long, slow process, a choice made again and again, but when it arrives, it brings a freedom that is unlike anything else. It is the freedom to live without the old chains, to love without fear, to see yourself without the distortions of the past. There will be moments when you feel the pull of old patterns, when you find yourself reacting as the child once did, with fear, with silence, with a desperate need for approval. Do not judge yourself in these moments. They are not signs of failure, but of opportunity. Each trigger is a portal, a chance to see where the child still longs for healing, instead of reacting automatically, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what is this really about? Who in me is feeling this? Often you will find that it is not the adult you, but the child you were asking once again to be seen. And so I say to you, do not run from this inner meeting. Do not bury the child in yet another layer of distractions and masks. Go to it. Sit with it. Let it tell its story. There may be tears, but these tears are not signs of weakness. They are signs that the soul is waking up, that the frozen parts of you are thawing and coming alive again. It is through these tears that the child begins to trust you. And in that trust, you will find the wholeness you have been searching for all your life. The world needs people who have made this journey. It needs people who can see not only themselves but also others. When you heal the child within, you begin to see the wounded child in everyone else, in the partner who struggles to love, in the friend who pushes you away, in the stranger who lashes out. You begin to realize that we are all, in some way, carrying invisible wounds. And in this realization, you become gentler, more compassionate, less quick to judge. You do not excuse harmful behavior, but you understand its roots. You can hold both truth and empathy, both boundaries and kindness. This is the essence of individuation, not becoming a perfect being, but becoming a whole one. Wholeness includes your light and your shadow, your joy and your pain, your adult and your child. It is the integration of all these parts into a single authentic self. When you live from this place of wholeness, you are no longer tossed around by the winds of other people's opinions or your own unhealed fears. You stand rooted, like a tree whose roots reach deep into the earth, drawing strength from all that it has endured. The child you were is calling you. It calls not with words, but with the quiet ache you feel when you are alone, with the longing that rises in the stillness of the night. Will you answer? Will you dare to turn inward, to look into the eyes of that forgotten self and say, I'm here now, and I will never abandon you again? If you do, you will find that something miraculous begins to happen. The child will smile, the shadows will soften, and the song you thought was lost will rise again from the garden of your soul. This is a gift of facing the hidden wounds. It is not just about healing the past. It is about reclaiming your life. It is about living with the fullness of who you are, unshackled, unafraid, unashamed. It is about walking through this world, not as someone who is broken, but as someone who has been broken open, open to love, open to truth, open to the mystery of life itself. And so I leave you with this. Do not be afraid of the child you once were. Do not be afraid of the wounds you still carry. They are not your enemy. They are your guide. Follow them inward, and you will find not only pain, but also beauty, not only sorrow, but also strength. In the depths of what was unseen lies the essence of who you truly are. And when you find it, you will know you were never truly invisible. You were always here, waiting for yourself to finally see